Hi, I'm Josh Seiden. I'm a designer, a product guy, and a strategy coach and author. I help clients launch new products and services, and I help them create more agile and entrepreneurial organizations.
I'm Jeff Gothelf. I'm an author, speaker, and a trainer. I've worked as a designer and a product manager and entrepreneur in the past. And these days I work with organizations, helping them build great products and helping executives build the cultures that build great products, heavily focused on their customers.
Thank you for coming on. Guys, I've got you on because I want to talk about your new book, Who Does What by How Much? And it's a book about OKRs. Were there not enough books about OKRs already?
We actually struggled with that a little bit. We've been interested in and working with OKRs for a while now. And we asked ourselves the same question at the beginning of this project. We said, really, does the world need another OKR book? Because there are a bunch of good ones out there. And the conclusion we came to was that we actually did have something to offer here, which was the customer-centric point of view, right? That the title of the book, Who Does What by How Much? You start with identifying who is the target of your work. And we think that that's a really important element of OKRs that we could bring to the conversation.
Were you doing something that looked like OKRs before you called it OKRs, or were you only ever setting goals and milestones using OKRs as a language?
For me, the book that came before this one was a book called Outcomes Over Output. The idea of outcomes has been really important for the work that Jeff and I do together, right? Which is that it's not about what you make, it's about the result. And this idea of outcomes, we've been using this definition that an outcome is a valuable and measurable change in customer behavior. Who does what by how much? Who is the customer? Does what is the behavior change? Measurable is by how much. And so that idea worked really, really well at the team level. It worked really well at the product level. But how does it fit into the organizational level? And how do you create a system out of it that can align the entire organization? With our aha moment came when we realized that, good OKR, the objectives, right? What's your target? And KR, key result. The key result is how you measure your progress. A good OKR, the key result should be an outcome, right? Should be a change in human behavior. And when you put those two ideas together, that the outcome equals KR, this kind of sort of light goes on for people, it becomes much easier to write good OKRs. It becomes much clearer how to use them. And that sort of being very specific and inserting that kind of customer-centric idea. First of all, it brought our work together. It brought us to OKRs, but I think it also then sort of powers a new way of thinking about OKRs.
It's interesting because when you talk about that, I get this echo of when I'm talking to clients about strategy, and I say, because lots of clients do strategic planning, which is no strategy, just planning. And they're planning because they're resources that they have control over that they are going to use in a certain way. And that whole, who is your customer and what do you want them to do? What is the behavior change? You have no control over that. You can only hope to do that. And then you have to measure to see whether you're getting the result that you want. And if you don't, then you have to be agile and change. And so I think that whole, OKRs and strategy are very, if done well, are very interconnected. And as you say, very different from, let's do a series of things. I'm going to do X, Y, Z. Why are you doing it? And then you have this awkward pause where people go, well, what do you mean? Why am I doing it? It's like to be busy, and I've been in so many management meetings where people turn up and they just say, they've all got 20 minutes to present and it's how busy they've been, which is really a precursor for why they haven't achieved anything because they've been so busy doing something else. But Jeff, what have you're looking to chime in.
A couple things, right? So the connection between OKR and strategy is strong. We talk about that in the book. Can you do OKRs without strategy? Sure. You can write goal statements without strategy. But what happens is there's no anchor for the organization. There's no, kind of thread that ties together the goals so that everyone's pulling in the same direction. So to answer your question, why are you doing this? We're supporting the strategic goal. Terrific. How are we supporting the strategic goal? Well, this is the outcome that we'd like to create. And what's interesting is like, it's not just why are you, like the questions like, why are you doing this work is a great question. Why are you choosing to do it this way is another question that comes up, right? And then a third question that comes up is, how do you know you've done a good job? And in the past, we sort of ignored those questions because it's like, well, why are you doing this? Because I was told to. Why are you doing it this way? Because I was told to. How do you know you did a good job? Because I was told I did a good job.
Or
right?
maybe,
Like,
or maybe I
that,
have no idea.
yeah, and that's essentially saying I don't know, right? But someone told me all of these things in the past. But the reality is that today the pace of change is way too fast for somebody to just sit there and prescribe everything to an organization or a team or a business unit and just say, I know the way 100%, just go execute my vision. There's just too much change. By the time that vision is executed, the reality is that a good percentage of those assumptions that leader has prescribed are going to be wrong. And so if we redefine first of all, if we identify strategic direction, that's huge. And then we redefine the goals from a customer perspective, then all of a sudden we have an objective lens with which to view answers to those questions. Why are you working on this? Because I'm trying to create a better future state for my customers. Okay, great. Why are you choosing to work this way? Well, we tried 3 other ways and the customers didn't respond positively to it. And how do you know you've done a good job? Well, we've seen the customers now use the product more, use it more successfully, tell their friends, spend more money, whatever it is that we're trying to do. So we've got these objective lenses when we write these customer-centric goals to determine what to do, how to do it, when we're done, and whether or not we've actually done a good job.
How well has the book been received?
I mean, look, overall, everything we've heard to our face has been very positive. I think there's been, kind of overwhelmingly positive reviews on Amazon. The feedback that we're getting from our early readers, they gave us some pretty tough love when we were writing the book. And the final version, after they read it, they said, "Wow, you really brought this to where we expected it to be." And kind of coming back to an earlier question, I strongly believe that the book is getting that reception because it fills a gap in the sort of the conversation about OKRs. Kind of at the very top, you've got John Doerr's Measure What Matters, which got everybody excited about OKRs back in 2016, and made everybody want to be like Google and like Bono, et cetera. At a very, very tactical level, you've got Christina Whitkey's Radical Focus, focusing on kind of how to do OKRs at the single team level. And in the middle there, for us, there was, as Josh said, the opportunity to bring in the customer-centric point of view, but also kind of to fill in the gap and say, hey, you've got 5 teams or 15 or 50 or 100 teams, and here's what that looks like as you start to build this goal-setting framework and this new way of working. And so we've been getting feedback that reflects what we hope to achieve with the book that says, yeah, you've done that with the book so far.
It always feels to me that there's this sort of bifurcation in there. Do they, John or in Measure What Matters, they have this sort of everything rolls down and the team above's key results become your objectives. And then there's the other bottom up view that says, no, that doesn't make any sense. That's the same as being told what to do. Where do you sit?
Yeah. I think one of the things that we really believe is that in kind of today's work, the work we're doing today, the problems are so difficult and the answers are so unclear. And, it's a fundamental problem of knowledge work. You hire smart people. If you tell them what to do, you're only taking advantage of, I don't know, I'm going to make a number up, 1/3 of their capabilities, right? So how do you unlock people's creativity, right? We've known for a long time that you give them a problem to solve, right? And then you set them loose on solving that problem. OKRs, right? Management by objectives, are sort of the first management system to really embrace that. And so OKR is just an evolution of that. I think if you're really embracing this idea that we're giving people an objective, then part of it is giving them agency over that objective, right? And so you certainly, as the leader of large companies, or really the leader of any organization, it's on you to understand the big picture and to set direction. And that's what you do with your company-wide OKR, right? Or your handful of company-wide OKRs. But to then dictate, okay, well, now this team, this is your OKR. This team, this is your OKR. I think that you're not taking advantage of the opportunity there. And so, what we believe is that there's a conversation at each level, and a conversation to clarify where we're going, what are the opportunities, what are the problems. That conversation is a two-way conversation, because if I'm a frontline team engaged with the customer, I have a point of view about what the user or the customer is trying to do that the C-suite doesn't have. It's not because they're, dumb or bad at their jobs. It's because they have a different job. And so if you can figure out a way to have that conversation up and down the levels of the organization, you've got something really powerful happening. That said, you do have to, the part of what you're trying to do with OKRs, right? You're trying to unlock the creativity of the organization, but you're also trying to keep everybody aligned. And so, every team's OKR needs to be tied to an OKR at the level above them. But you don't do that by sort of deterministically saying, well, here's the algorithm, here's our objective, here's our key result. Our key result becomes your objective. No, that's not how it works. It happens through a conversation. It happens by unlocking the creativity of everyone in the organization.
As you were talking, I was thinking about a conversation I had with a CEO recently, and it was just that absolutely unlocking potential. The dev team had been tasked with, somebody had decided that what the product needed was a series of features. And so they were currently working through this feature list backlog and delivering them. And then the CEO said, look, what we really need is, at the point where we do a demo to a client, we need to absolutely blow their minds, and we need to review all of the historic data and spot things that they didn't find in their data themselves to show on the demo the value in this product. And he said to the team, go and work on that. Like, what can we, like, in the next 24 hours, can you come up with some idea? Within a week, they had an AI algorithm that in a demo could spot things that the customer had missed. And it's like the conversion rate goes from begging people to sign to begging people, pushing people away because they're so keen to deploy the product. And it's just that, then the team go, we've actually done something that makes a difference to the customer, and as opposed to these features which somebody might like, but we're not really sure, and it's not feedback. So just totally transformed the speed, and I'm sure the speed of the other things that they're working on, because they've risen to the challenge.
It's incredibly powerful to engage, I think, with the people that you serve, to understand what they're trying to do, what's motivating them to do that, what's getting in their way. I think one of the most interesting things that you can learn when you're getting to know your customers is the hacks that they've put in place to make your product work for them, or the systems that they've strung together to make things make sense for them. And it's enlightening and it's humbling, I think, because we all think we're smart. We all think we're good at our jobs, and we all think we know what we're doing. But the reality is, again, everything that we put out into the world is based on a series of assumptions, our best guesses based on what we know. And the sooner that we can find out if those guesses are wrong or right, the sooner we can adjust course and build something better. And when that information is easily available to us, when there's that regular feedback loop with the people that we serve, the work gets better, the excitement gets better, the productivity, the innovation, the creativity, it all skyrockets.
Let me wind you back then up to a sort of strategic level. How are you suggesting that? What's the time frame for the corporate OKR? How do you set those linked to some strategy, or are they the same thing?
So roughly speaking, right? Everything is sort of a rule of thumb here, but roughly speaking, we want to set strategic goals for a year at least, right? So for 12 months, we're going to focus the organization in this direction. This is our strategic goal. We have an objective and organizational key results that are tied into that strategic objective.
And is that's linked to something else, which is 3, 5, 10, some other order of magnitude of length out, 12 months progress towards X?
I think an organization needs a vision as to where it's headed. I just think that I think it's risky to set your predictions out 3, 5, 10 years. I think tactically at least, right? I think from a vision perspective, saying, in 10 years, we really would like to be the global leader in this particular space. Okay, that's great. But if you're going to say in 10 years, we're going to deliver this product on this platform in this particular way, I think that's unrealistic. I mean, just look, a year ago, were we talking about AI? Really? I think we were talking about NFTs a year ago. We don't talk about that.
I was thinking something, you said having a vision, I was thinking, we might have a goal to be, we've picked a segment, we've picked some customers whose problem we want to be the best in the world at solving. Customer service is a thing. Maybe we care about our employees and we want, a really engaged workforce. The OKRs that you would set have to be, there's some framework or strategic pillars that would want you to decide that these are the 3 to 5 things that we're going to focus the organization on. If you're Ryanair, you probably don't care so much. Whereas if you're, I don't know, Nordstrom's, you care more, or maybe you have to pretend you care more. But there's one organization is going to be focused on cost, and the other is going to be focused on customer service, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, a strategy is, you would imagine, right, it's a thing that plays out over a number of years, right? And if you're doing it right, you're in the business of refining and observing and measuring your progress towards that strategy. And so you'll have annual goals, right? I think, one of the things about strategies, we want the goals to be visible quickly. Sometimes they are, and sometimes they're not. So, I think with OKRs, there's a sort of, there's a rhythm that we always recommend starting with, right? Which is you have your annual goals, your annual OKRs. You have your quarterly check-ins on your OKRs where you can do your adjustment. You have your monthly check-ins, right? And then you have your weekly check-ins, right? And those have different audiences, right? Your weekly check-in is usually your small team. Your monthly check-in's a little bit bigger. Your quarterly is a little bit bigger. And so you've got this kind of ongoing rhythm. Now, I know consultants who believe that rhythm is immutable, right? That you only work in, weeks, months, quarters, years. You don't give any organization the opportunity to adjust that, no matter what the organization is or what their business cycle looks like. And the reason you do that is as a forcing function, because otherwise it's really easy to have wiggle room and to say, well, our business is slow.
Our business is different. You don't understand the industry we're in.
Yeah, I think folks like that make a compelling argument for why you should be really rigid with your timeframes. I don't really believe that. We spoke to a seasoned, at the beginning of this project, we talked to a seasoned OKR consultant who told us, Brett Knowles told us, the first rule of OKRs is that there's no first rule of OKRs. And so I think this is OKRs are a good framework. They're a great place to start, right? But you have to make it your own. And so I think starting with that timeline is terrific. And then, making it your own is really going to make it great.
So we do, you say we do corporate level annual objectives and key results.
Yeah.
And then it goes down to teams, goes down the next level in the organization. Are they then also pick an annual, or are they just picking, I'm going to do something in the next 90 days that makes a contribution to?
So I think they should have an eye on their annual OKR but
Okay.
they need to be checking in on that quarterly, and they need to be prepared to say, like, okay, look, here's our annual OKR, right? Here's our, now for the key results. If you're structuring your key results so that you're not going to see any key result until the end of the year, you're doing it wrong, right? So you need to say, well, okay, in 3 months, what are we going to see? We better see some result, because if we're not, we've set this incorrectly. So you always have to have, you want to be able to say, are we seeing key results this week? Are we seeing key results this month? Are we seeing key results this quarter? And if we're not, we're taking big risks, right? Because we're saying, well, we're going to work on something for a year and only then see if it pays off.
How do you look to overcome this sort of human nature around doing the easy thing first? Often I see, a project's green, 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 red. We're 85% the way through and now it's gone red. How did that happen? Well, because we took the thing that we didn't really understand or we didn't know about and we didn't do it. We did the easy stuff because people like to be busy and like to say they're on track and they're doing something useful. You got any light to shed on, how to get that risk and uncertainty early?
Look, the prioritization changes when you're working with customer-centric goals, with customer-centric OKRs, because your goal is no longer to be busy per se or to deliver a specific thing, but rather to change human behavior, to change customer behavior. Now, look, if the easy things get that behavior moving in the right direction, terrific. Let's get that knocked out. Let's get that behavior moving in the right direction. Let's make our customers happy. But if you're trying the easy things or an easy thing and it doesn't move the needle in the right direction, you've got to move on to something else. Eventually, you're going to run out of easy things and probably have to take on the hard things to move the needle significantly in the right direction. So the prioritization certainly can involve level of effort in there, but the sort of the definitive barometer for whether we're going to work on something or not is how likely do we believe this thing will help us move achieve our key result, our outcome, our customer behavior in the right direction.
And if we have a hypothesis about this change in behavior, how do we test the hypothesis early before we double down and invest? So I think this customer centricity thing is really the key. This is really the difference in your thinking and what's come before. How did you work this out? Like, did it occur to you one day in the shower that like that's you'd ended up here, or what's sort of the genesis of
Dominic? I'll tell you, I was born knowing this. No, I'll tell you the evolution of the idea that Jeff and I met in New York, coming on 15 years ago. And we were both interested in the work of Eric Ries. Eric Ries wrote a book called The Lean Startup, And Eric Ries talked a lot about this idea. First of all, he talked about the idea of hypotheses and risks, right? So startups are a risky business. Product development is risky business. It's risky because we don't know the answers. And so how do we understand, first of all, Jeff was talking about prioritization, right? So how do we prioritize? Well, we should go for the big risks first. That's the first question. How do we know we're making progress against that risk? Well, we want to see outcomes. So outcomes was a word that I heard first in the lean startup universe. And I have to admit, I didn't really understand it. And so, I sort of thought about it as vaguely results. And we wrote, Jeff and I in 2013, we wrote a book called Lean UX, which was about how it was a real practical guidebook for people who are interested in that lean startup approach and wanted to bring it into their teams. And we wrote about outcomes. And I was never happy with that section of the book. We did a second edition and we learned some more about it. And I thought it was better. It wasn't until the third edition that somehow we'd cracked it. We'd been, working with teams, coaching teams, teaching teams. And we came up with this formulation that what was an outcome. It was a valuable and measurable change in customer behavior. And so it, was it an epiphany? No. I mean, it was 15 years of working and teaching teams to try and figure out what were the ideas that teams could actually use. How could we express this idea? How could we capture it? And how could we make it really practical and actionable? And sort of the last evolution of the idea has been bringing it into this OKR world.
What were you not happy about first edition? What did you change in the first and second edition around that book?
Oh, I don't remember. Jeff will tell you I'm the worst perfectionist in the world.
I remember. I'll tell you one thing. It's funny. There's 5 years between. So there's 3 editions of Lean UX, our first book. It's 5 years between each edition.
Okay.
When we went to write the second edition, we had to go back. I had to go back and read the first edition. I was mortified. They allowed that book to be published. I was like, did we just forget how to speak English? Like, it was just, there were so many things in that book. I was like, I cannot believe they let us even publish this thing. And it was, look, and the reality is that it was really tactical and very, very design focused. That was, for me, was the other sort of thing that I wanted to change as we were evolving the book in its second and ultimately its third edition. And there's a significant difference. The third edition is a much broader book, still tactical and practical, but much more focused on cross-functional collaboration across silos and disciplines. But the first book was, we were 2 designers trying to help designers do better work in a rapidly changing software development environment. That was it. And by the third edition, we were significantly better book writers as well. So that made a big difference.
Are there bits of organizations that you find OKRs harder than others?
So I would say that, one of the titles that we considered for this book was Everyone Has a Customer. And the challenge in organizations when you take a customer-centric point of view, especially as the organizations get big, is that people say, well, okay, there's a customer out there. They're signing the contract to buy our stuff, or they're putting the $5 bill on the counter, But we're HR, or we're the legal team, or, we're operations. We don't touch the customer. We don't interact with the customer. And so I think for those organizations, imagining a customer-centric world can be challenging. And, in the book, I think our point of view is that everyone in every organization has a customer. That doesn't mean that your customer in HR is the end customer.
Yeah.
Okay. Your customer in HR might be the hiring manager who's looking to fill an open seat. Right?
Yeah.
Your customer in HR might be the employee who has questions about his or her healthcare benefit. Your customer in HR could be the candidate who's applying for a role. And so the question that we ask everybody to consider is, who is the human inside or outside of this organization that consumes my work?
Yeah.
And to think about how to make what is that person trying to do, and how can I make that person more successful as a result of my work? So some organizations are really used to thinking about customers. Sales, for example, they're all about customers. You don't have to tell me to be customer centric, right? But other organizations, this is a new way of thinking about work, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's a very, very powerful way of working, and people love it. People are like, oh, I have this new power, but it's definitely a change.
One of the other things that I see that is a challenge for some of the organizations I work with is that people have been promoted up to the C-suite. So often I'm working with fast-growing organizations, and the C-suite probably all now running the largest company they've ever run, maybe even ever been in. And they got promoted because they were sole contributors. They're now on the C-suite, and their criteria for success of the team is collaboration. But they didn't need collaboration ever before in their working lives. And now they appeared in this team. and collaboration is the key. So one of the things with OKRs is having a corporate OKR that is owned by more than one of them is like, and it's like they just want to go away, and like the sales guy just wants things in sales. Like, don't make me collaborate with people because I'm not comfortable. It's not my forte. Just pay me on selling widgets. Like, you got some thoughts on overcoming that, or how ownership gets rolled out, Jeff? Maybe
we did an executive coaching gig a few years ago with the leadership team at a bank. And we had that group of leaders from across the organization. We had the technical leader, we had the business leader, we had the marketing leader, the HR leader. And what you describe is exactly how they were, right? Each one of them was a subject matter expert in their silo, and they had no idea how to collaborate with their colleagues who they were meeting with regularly and speaking with. They just wanted to work in their own world. And we actually, in helping them first write these shared goals. That's the first thing that we did, was to write these shared goals together. For example, they had a real issue around where to open and close new offices, which impacted operations. It impacted the business, HR, technical infrastructure. You name it, right? There were all kinds of implications, and it couldn't be made by a single individual. And so we helped them write a shared goal for that. And then we had them, we literally sat them down together and worked with them to help them create shared hypotheses. So it wasn't one person's idea, but it was the group's idea. We think we should open a couple of offices here and close these offices. Okay, why? What do we hope to see? What are the outcomes that we hope to see? Well, we hope to see some percentage of folks transfer from this office to that office. We hope to see the quality of talent that we're hiring in the new places go up, et cetera. Like, we literally had them write this down. That helped a lot, right? They kind of built that shared ownership. And then there had to be a division of labor. Okay, how are we going to test these hypotheses? And we just didn't allow them to go by themselves. They had to have a partner. They had to have a buddy. It was a buddy system. So even if it was your thing to go figure out, like you were the operations leader, right? The COO, you had to take the HR leader with you, right? Or you had to take the business leader with you so that somebody else could hear things firsthand. And it's absolutely magical, right? When leaders, first of all, they go together for the first time, and they hear feedback on their ideas in real time together. They come back and they'll say things like, "You'll never believe what happened. People told us they didn't like this idea," or something along those lines. And it was powerful, but it had to be facilitated, handheld, and honestly, to a certain extent, forced almost, because these guys, they don't like to be told what to do, right? These are the highest leaders in an organization, and the point is, you've hired us to help you get better. You've got to at least try this. And it worked. It worked, but it required that explicit facilitation and that realization that the goals that they were setting for the organization actually were shared goals.
Well, and so often, if that's not how they've worked before, all the remuneration will be lined up against individual and silo, and none of it will be lined up horizontally in teams. So that often needs looking at as well. But I'm just playing in my head. I'm thinking, well, what happened when those two people came back? Well, instead of beating up on the operations guy, I bet some people looked at the HR person and went, "What really happened?" And it's like, okay, well, because you say that was true, I now trust him, because in the past I didn't trust him, but I trusted you. And all that starts to play out. People realize they can get stuff done if they can collaborate. The other thing is, though, sometimes people think it's easier not to collaborate, because it's easier to just say, "You didn't involve me in the decision and I don't agree with the decision," and complain, than it is to lean in and try and get a better outcome.
And I think the other benefit here, at least in our experience with folks like this, is that it starts to build in a hint of humility. Right. I'm not going to say that we transformed this leadership team into a bunch of humble servants, servant leaders. You know what I'm saying? But there were hints of humility that began to bubble through sort of this very stern facade of, "I am the boss and I tell people what to do." Because the data that they were bringing back, the insight that they were bringing back, contradicted their ideas. It conflicted with what they said, what they told their colleagues. And then when they came back and said, you know what, people didn't actually agree with us. And so to me, that's massively powerful, because once humility starts to sneak into the leadership team, we truly start to lay the foundation for a learning organization and a customer-centric one.
Do you roll OKR? Do you throw OKRs at the whole organization, or do you start at the top? And if you start at the top, like, do you then go silo at a time, or do you do it in layers? What have you seen work best?
So I think the recommendation is don't start with the whole organization. It's just too risky. You're gonna get it wrong. Like, rolling out OKRs is hard, and the specifics of the way it's hard are different from every organization to from each organization to the next, right? And so take the time and start in an organization that is small enough that you can manage the rollout and really give it the attention that it needs, and large enough so that you can learn something important, right? And then as you learn and you figure out how to be successful with OKRs, you can start bringing in other parts of the organization, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing is, absolutely, you need support from the top. Without support from the top, you're not going to be successful, right? And so we've heard, as we were researching the book, we heard case studies of these sort of bottom-up initiatives where OKRs made a difference. Someone at some team level decided to start doing it. But it'll only go so far, right? It'll work inside that organization, but it'll never really be able to spread, and there will be limits to what you'll be able to do with it if you can't get really strong leadership buy-in. So start small, make sure you have the buy-in, and expand from there.
It feels to me that that's probably, you've said it's hard. If you don't have the leadership team empathetically understanding why it's hard, because they haven't tried to do it themselves, they've got no empathy for why. I'm telling you to use OKRs, but unless you've tried to write them, unless other people have told you that what you've written is a load of rubbish, and given you a hard time each quarter when you come back and say you haven't hit your KPIs or your key results, then it's just like you don't have any empathy. Which brings me, I've got one other question which I want to throw at you, which is, one of the other challenges that organizations I find have is deciding how much effort, because OKRs are it takes time and effort to do. I feel as though OKRs are around change and BAU is about, running the business as it is today. Have you got any sense of how people might decide how much time to commit to OKRs? Because people turn up and they go, look, we're busy. Don't give me anything else to do. Right. So, how have you helped people carve out enough time and make sure that they're putting it, that they're not failing because they didn't put in enough time or commitment?
There are certain health metrics for the stability and operation of a business that need to be maintained, right? Uptime for the digital products and services and infrastructure that supports the business, call center metrics, et cetera. Those are the types of things that we need to make sure are always running those business as usual metrics and are maintained at a very, very high level. We are working with one organization and with the operations team, and they measure their reliability in the number of nines that come after the decimal point, right? 99 point. And then are we at 4 nines, at 5 nines, at 6 nines of stability, right? Those folks, that's what they breathe in and day out. We need to leave those folks to do that work on a day in and day out basis. OKRs are there to help teams focus on what's most important right now. And maybe for those BAU teams, just maintaining the systems at 4 or 5 nines of reliability is the most important thing. And we're going to leave them alone. Let them do the thing that they know how to do very, very well. And other teams are going to focus going to create OKRs and focus them on the things that are most important for them to focus on right now to further the business in other contexts, in other disciplines, in other parts of the organization itself.
Okay. Brilliant. You got some book recommendations? We've measured John Doerr's Measure What Matters. We've mentioned Eric Ries, Lean Startup. Any other books you think?
Christina Whitkey's Radical Focus is an excellent book on OKRs. It's a great place to start. What else, Josh?
So I will say I've just come back from a vacation, and so I spent that vacation not reading professional related books. I have been very interested in photography, and so maybe there are some listeners who are interested in photography. There's a new exhibit of Robert Frank photos opening in New York this fall. And so I've been looking at Robert Frank's photo books, and they're incredible. There's your left field recommendation for the day, Dominic.
Fantastic. Look, I'm going to dive in, and I've got a couple of quick fire questions for you both. What's your genius?
I'll tell you what Jeff's genius is.
Go on. That's
there you
good.
go. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, you do me.
It's like a married couple. Let me tell you what I know about you.
Well, Jeff's got two. Jeff's genius is ship it. Jeff is the most productive person I've ever met. Get it done.
What's his other one?
Jeff is incredibly good at explaining hard concepts clearly. He's just, I think he does a great job of taking things that are complex and explaining them in clear ways.
Jeff, what about Josh? What's his?
Oh gosh,
genius.
So much pressure. He said nice things about me. Look, I'll say this. I like to. If there's two things, I'll share two things. I think Josh is excellent at his genius is in facilitating a room. I think Josh can take a room of angry cats and have them singing in harmony by the end of an hour,
nice.
Which is pretty incredible. And then the other thing too, I like is that I like, so Josh and I work well together because my ship it approach is just to go and do it. And Josh is like, wait, what did you think about this? And did you think about that? Did you think about that? And that kind of, I was like, oh, right. I forgot about that. And so I really appreciate that methodical way of like slowing it down a little bit, but in the right way, not for the sake of slowing it down, but for the sake of doing it well.
Okay. Stick with you, Jeff, then. What unpopular opinion do you hold?
Oh my gosh. I don't like the Rolling Stones.
Josh,
never got them. Never understood it.
Oh my God. Matcha. Well, who knows?
Okay. What's the most significant risk you've ever taken?
The most significant risk I've ever taken was quitting my job in 2012 with 3 months of runway with 2 young kids, a wife, and a mortgage, and starting a business with Josh. It's true. That was the biggest risk I've taken.
Josh, what about you? What's your biggest risk?
Oh my goodness. I'm going to be boring. I think that was the same thing. I mean, I didn't quit my job for it.
Let me ask you, I'll ask you this next one, then you can just start with this. How do you measure success? Not in business, but just in life.
The health and happiness of my family, obviously, is the top of the list. But after that, for me personally, it's about learning. Am I learning something? I know it's time to leave a job when I'm no longer learning, so for me, that's the biggest motivation.
Jeff?
For me, the biggest motivation is to have the ability to live on my own terms. To me, that's the biggest motivation, and to kind of create this balance of working and living and enjoying and spending time with my family and with my friends and doing what I want to do while still doing meaningful work. To me, that's the biggest motivation I have. It's finding that balance and nurturing it, sustaining it.
Josh, you said learning is the thing. What's the most recent thing you've learned or skill you've acquired?
So in 2020, I decided that I was going to put serious energy into photography. which was a new pursuit for me. And so I've spent the last 4 years studying, making pictures, learning how to do it, and it's been wonderful.
Jeff, what's the latest skill you've acquired?
Similarly, I've been playing piano my whole life, but in the last 6 months, I met a local blues piano player, and I started taking lessons with him, and he has essentially taken apart 40 years of practice and method and technique, and is reconstructing my playing, and it's incredibly painful and difficult and rewarding, and I love it.
Oh, that's brilliant. Clients often say, how will this feel? And I say, this working with me will be really uncomfortable because I'm going to show you that you're shit at things you didn't even know you were shit at.
Yeah.
And there are lots of things you already know you're shit at. So it's going to be a lot. It's going to be a big pile before we start making progress. Gents, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you today. It's been brilliant. Thank you very much. I feel, and I'm sure that listeners or viewers do as well, I have a better sense of how I might successfully roll out OKRs in organizations. So that's been fantastic. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us.
Thanks for having us.
Dominic, thank you so much for having us on the program. It's been really fun.